Welcome to the Daily Tech Podcast, your go-to source for the latest in startup news, tech trends, and more. Today is April 19th, and I'm Tristan McKenna, your host, and have worked in startups for a decade.
Amit Sanghvi have well over a decade plus in tech, like to opine on a bunch of different things, currently building Humanity X.0, the human-centric AI company, and one day perhaps people will opine on how I'm getting on with that.
Looking forward to it. Today we'll be covering Tesla cuts, AI boosts a struggling company, and Trump's media company outlook. All right, the first story today is Tesla layoff. So Tesla announced they are laying off 10% of their global staff. They have around 140,000 employees overall, so that equates to roughly 14,000. I think I read a report that was just over 14,000. It has been a very tough year for Tesla. They have lost their crown last year as the biggest EV car delivery to BYD. They are about to miss delivery targets, and their stock has lost $300 billion this year so far. One, the optics don't look great on this, considering a day after he asked to reincorporate in Texas today so that he can get his $56 billion pay package. I don't have a problem with the pay package. You know, it was agreed to. The lawsuit was over how it actually came to be, but the actual amount, you know, that's what was agreed to. It just doesn't look good. And I would say with Musk, optics have never been his strong point. The final and probably more important point is that I actually don't think these layoffs are that crazy when you think about it. Salesforce reduced 10% of their staff. Meta lost 13% of their staff. God knows what happened to Twitter. 75% of their staff was just hit with a cleaver. So in relative comparison, people think this, and I think they see Musk as this great firer to some degree, you know, a Trump-ish type of role. But I don't think the numbers are that crazy, if I'm being honest. But what do you think?
So let's talk about the story behind the story, because I agree. I don't think those numbers are crazy apart from his pay package, but that was agreed to. The story behind the story. So let's just taking a quick step back. As I understand it, one of the reasons why Tesla had the valuation that it did. So right now, let's remember, when there's a drop in Tesla's share price, it's coming from pretty high highs. The valuations were insane, so it's going to look insane no matter what you do. But one of the reasons for the valuation being high was this whole concept, as I understand it, of Tesla being able to turn their network of cars that are out in the world into the largest network of autonomous vehicles, taxi vehicles. And then as an owner of a Tesla car, you can put it to work and earn passive income from it. The reason why I'm bringing that up is he wants to do things that are absolutely impossible in most people's eyes. And he feels quite often that he can't do them in the public eye, building as a public company. Now, Tesla's not going to go get privatized, but he wants more and more control. So I think some of the dynamics playing out at Tesla right now, it not performing well, sure, are external, the EV market being what it is. But I wonder if a lot of it is actually internal politics and dynamics not allowing it to move as quickly as we might expect.
Well, interesting, you talk about taking private. He famously had that 420 taking private tweet that got him into some SEC trouble. But, you know, story for another day.
Time, yeah.
Another day. All right, the second story this week is that VC firm Andreessen Horowitz recently raised over $7 billion for a couple different vehicles. Half of it is going towards a growth vehicle, so for follow-ons and companies that are doing well and putting money behind it. The other half is going to, roughly half, is going to a couple different areas, but really the ones that kind of stuck out were this area called American Dynamism, which we'll talk about in a little sec, and then AI. So those are two that were, and there's a little bit for gaming and for other areas as well, but those are two that really stuck out. I think for American Dynamism, which is really just for Americans' national interests, so things like defense, infrastructure, to me, that actually makes a lot of sense. One, America has recovered incredibly well post-COVID, more than any of the other big G7 or big boy countries. They've done better than the UK, better than the EU. Final thing I'll say, and this is where I may sound really stupid, and again, very silly that we're going to have this on camera, but is $7 billion a lot of money in this new AI world? And the reason I say this is that I think VC has changed quite a bit in the sense that it's no longer VC firms competing with VC firms. It's now VC competing with a revamped version of corporate venture capital. Microsoft put $10 billion into OpenAI. Amazon has just put just under $3 million into Anthropic. I think we are at the start of a new kind of vision fund era with a lot of money being spent that is going to be needed for these new AI giants. But what's your thoughts on this one?
So Their fund is probably the most talked about fund right now. You mentioned some of the names. I have a list here as well. I think they were initially, or at least one of the founders in Skype, Facebook, Twitter, Airbnb, Coinbase, Lyft, Slack, Stripe, now Flow, Mistral AI. They're in some of the biggest names, and so there's a lot of activity around them. But that last point that you made really stands out. 7 billion, I don't think is that much. So we'll both go down probably in the books as being crazy. A16Z is, I was looking at some of their stats. Their investment to exit ratio is about 17% in 2023, compared to 21% from the other big boys like Sequoia. So when I think about them and you look at their historical portfolio, it's very, very tech focused, which then just makes me wonder, do they need to diversify? And maybe that is part of the intent behind this particular fund.
Our third story now, Rent the Runway, where you can rent fashion apparel, saw its stock surge over 200% after an earnings call where the CEO mentioned that AI helped fuel growth. And so for those that maybe not familiar as much with Rent the Runway, it was a tech company, a real darling during the pandemic. Everybody went online and started buying and or borrowing clothes and fashion apparel. So they readjusted their earnings to say that they had a very dismal growth last year. I think it was in the 0.6, something like that. But they've now readjusted it for this year and look forward to 1% to 6%, which is a very big gap, but again, looking positive overall. And they said largely what helped grow this was their AI search that where you could put in for product listings, something like Miami Vibes. There is what I imagine I'm going to start calling this AI two-step, which is you see growth and you just add the words AI next to it.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see a lot more of that. And I don't know if they are related is the two thing. Like maybe that is related, that actually Rent the Runway has seen a lot of growth. And I was looking, some of the main challenges I actually think AI could solve. But I think they're smart enough to know that if you just add AI to something that's going positive, you will get a double boost on that. Do you think this is AI washing or is it more real?
Emphatic AI washing, whether or not intentional. I don't mean to imply that they're doing it intentionally. That business is an interesting one. That whole space is an interesting one. So first of all, coming off of all-time lows, 200% jump, as you just pointed out, I don't know that it's meaningful. Second is, how much of an advantage really is it that you can put in Miami Vibes and get results? Can't every other fashion, retail, e-commerce business just do that, turn on the light switch? So, and this is where I connect it back to one of our earlier stories from the past podcasts, where we said, AI businesses listing on the IPO, who are going to be the biggest losers is retail investors, in my opinion. And I would hate to think that in this business, the mention of AI in the earnings call and the jump in the 200% jump is driven by a bunch of retail investors going into this stock because of the mention of AI. You really have to then look a layer deeper. AI is not the thing that defines a business. It's what problems are they solving with AI, and does that give them a unique advantage? The only other thing I would mention is a business like this, the cost, I don't know it well enough, so I'm just completely hypothesizing over here, but the cost of inventory, what happens when trends change? Then they have to buy more. Where are they storing it all? All those kind of costs, can they really ever get away from them? What are the margins? What do the margins really look like? I much prefer businesses. There's a much smaller startup called By Rotation, which is peer-to-peer dresses. The company itself doesn't need to stock the dresses. It's a marketplace where, if my wife owns a bunch of dresses and they're really nice, designer or not, depending on how the company is positioning it, she can put them up online for renting and somebody else can rent it. All right, so story number 4. This one's quite near and dear to me for good and bad reasons. Rewind, a company that's been around for a little bit of time, startup, rebrands itself as Limitless, launches a product called Pendant, which is flying off the shelves. It's selling and it's not available yet. It's going to be delivered August onwards. The founder seems really credible. He comes from a really interesting background himself, but the product is fascinating to me. It is an AI product. Pendant AI, I think, is what they call it. It comes with the promise of being able to expand an individual's memory and sort of augments their cognitive processing abilities, right? It's a wearable tech. The question, though, that I have is, are we witnessing the beginning of a major hardware revolution? There's so much wearable tech coming through.
I think we are slowly entering that space, which again, very exciting. We will see a lot of Juicero equivalents or kind of, less serious ones that come out of that as a result. And I was thinking the buzz around Limitless and the pendant has been much more positive than, I don't know if you saw this week, but
God, they got ripped to shreds. Humane, right?
Yeah, exactly. From the influencers and every review. Unfortunately, we don't want to pile on, but it just has not been positive for them. And I was trying to think, what did they do well versus the other one? So first of all, I'm more bullish on Limitless. I think it's not as intrusive. Like it's around a necklace that you can have. I think it solves a real use case. And I think one of the benefits they had is they started small. Where Humane, I think, tried to do everything. I think they tried to be a recorder. I think they tried to be a projector. Like I think they tried to do a lot. Where with with Limitless, it's going to be much more around your neck. It's going to help with human cognition, remembering things, and it's got this really kind of specific focus and a real maybe 1 to 3 use cases rather than 30. The big thing that always happens will be between demo and reality.
Yes.
So that will be the next step for them, and I think because they haven't promised the moon the way I think Humane did, I think they'll probably get a warmer reception.
I think what's also fascinating is the consent mode. Yet to be seen if it can fly, if it's going to fall foul of some privacy regulations or not. But I think it's fascinating. I do think they've started small, but they have also traction from Rewind AI. And they're actually bringing forward a lot of that technology into Pendant, whereas Humane was starting from scratch.
Yeah.
And they definitely did take on a lot. But watch this space with Humane. I don't think they're done and dusted. Okay, so story number 5, and we have Adam Newman in the picture. For those that don't know, he's got a new company called Flow. But those that don't know and missed it,
he's a new founder, right?
He would love to wipe the history clean. Actually, no, he's trying to go back. So Adam Newman had a business called WeWork, which completely transformed the business model and the office dynamics, going from like single occupancy offices, owned places, to having co-working spaces, completely transformed that model. Now he's coming back and trying to transform the real estate for residential model. A couple of things. One is, I think with the WeWork saga, where he transformed it, but then he was both responsible for the rise and collapse of the business, or at least many would have you believe it. There is something that happened which I think is fascinating. In that transformation, despite the way that it kind of burned down to flames, he transformed, I believe, the community aspect. Went from having these siloed offices with a single company to this almost like the walls inside an office building coming down, and businesses starting to actually connect with each other, and a community dynamic formed in the building between different companies. Now it makes me think, if you could bring that to the residential space, especially to the renting space, where communities don't really know each other. If there's a business that promises you good rental prices on a nice apartment, well maintained, and they facilitate this community aspect where you get to know your neighbors, I think that's actually quite interesting. Having said that, where's the tech element in all of this? We're a tech podcast. Why am I mentioning them in a tech podcast? Because they'll have you believe that it's a tech business. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of always the challenge, the same thing that WeWork had. I remember when we worked together, and I think we started at WeWork, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And I remember saying to you at the time, it's like, I just can't imagine how this is a tech company. You know, we talked about AI washing, there's tech washing that is the same equivalent. I don't. So there's an article that came out. He gave a bit more of an insight on what Flow, his residential company, will be. And he said something about, vertical integration with technology. There's an app. There's a new property management system that he's built, which again, all sounds good, but it's not very techy. And I think if he'd done this by himself, people just said, that's fine. I think the challenge is when you raise $350 million from Andreessen Horowitz and you get an instant unicorn status as a result of that, people do have an implication that, this is a tech-based company. The one thing I will say is that there's no real tech behind this. I looked at some of the comments he noted. It's an experience-first residential estate company. I have no idea what that means. It is we are the only real estate that builds its tech. He sounds kind of what happens when a building has a child with a fortune cookie. Like, he's just a very odd individual. And it reminds me a little bit of his IPO prospectus. It was very flowery language and but very limited hard substance behind it. So I don't think I'm as bullish on it, especially as a tech company and the tech multiples. All right, we're on to our second segment, which is over under, where one of us puts forward a statement and the other gives a comment on it. So I'll start. Trump's Twitter clone company, Trump Media, whatever it's called, do you think over under a $5 billion valuation by the end of this year? And for some help, it's at $3 billion right now.
Sadly, I think it's going to go over. And I think that's just because of the Trump popularity. And if he wins the election race, it's going to go over. Man, I worry about humanity.
X.O, right?
Maybe we can do something about it.
Yeah. I also say overs. The one point just before that is that take a guess what their revenue is.
Zero. I don't know. Like, okay, I'm guessing it's not zero, but yeah.
Zero. For a $3 billion company, take a guess what their revenue is.
I don't know. Have they even hit 7 figures?
Yeah, just barely. I think it was 4 million. But so it's way out of whack with that. There's no rationale. It's one of the biggest shorted stocks right now trading. The one thing I'll say, the reason why I would say it would be over that is I'm just projecting forward. That is probably one of the best ways to launder support for Donald Trump. In the sense, when he was president previously, they would say at his hotels and they would say, oh, we loved your hotels. And he would take a big affinity towards that. This is the cleaner way of doing that.
All right. So a mid-level NVIDIA employee is reported to have accrued a fortune of $62 million from maxing out his company employee purchase plan over 18 years. $62 million. The plan allows employees to buy shares options at 10 to 15% discount over the last, I think, 6 months trading price. So he just kept buying and then maxed it out, got $62 million and got out.
Nice.
I don't know if that's true or not. This has been said and it's reported quite widely. So on that basis, do you think, assuming it's true that this employee did get out, over or under that number? Do you think it's really possible that it was 62? Do you think it's understated or overstated?
I probably think it's probably right on par. I would say it's slightly overstated because people like to showboat a little bit, but I don't think it's too crazy. Like, I don't know how long this person was at, but if he was buying, don't forget, NVIDIA's only, jumped up in the last 3 or 4 years, but the company's been around. It started off as a gaming with the GPUs for some time for really good graphics, and they realized the horsepower in them was very strong. So, it's a bit like, for example, I think the Taiwan Semiconductor, the owner of it just continued to buy shares when it was a penny stock.
There's rumors that one individual had to sacrifice about $500 million worth of their shares to plug a gap in some other investment that they had going. So imagine being that individual.
Yeah, well, that's again, a bit of an aside, but that's been a bit of a problem I've been reading about, is that NVIDIA's had a problem really retaining staff because they've become overnight millionaires.
Successfully,
They're cashing out and they're saying it. So I think he recently just released another stock option grant at like 25-30% discount. All right, into our final section, news or fake news. So one of us will put forward a headline or a story, and the other one will try to guess, is that a real story or is it made up? I will start. News or fake news? The Winklevoss twins, famous for suing Facebook and crypto, have invested $4 million in a ninth tier football club in the UK. News or fake news?
I'm going to start with fake news.
You would be wrong.
Oh.
It's genuinely a real club called Real Bedford FC. I think they are the one that was a social media one, or started by an influencer or something like that.
Okay.
There's a bit of a backstory to it, but they put $4 million worth of crypto in this week or last. It's making it the first football club powered by Bitcoin. So 9th
You know what? I'm so annoyed with myself. I read that story as well.
You only have yourself to blame.
Never mind. So, true or fake news?
Yeah.
NVIDIA's Jim Fan, Elon Musk, and Vinod Khosla are predicting 1 billion humanoid robots in the next 10 years, effectively making labor free.
I'm going to say fake news.
Damn, can we please go back? Okay, so fake news. This is a tweet that was made, and I don't know how much traction it's getting. I just challenged it. No, well, I challenged it today.
Okay, right.
The person that made it was a tweet and actually a post on LinkedIn. I won't call out the individual, but I challenged it today to say, where's the, can you substantiate this claim that these individuals said that? There's no proof or evidence of it. 1 billion humanoids in the next 10 years. And then, in the comments, it's interesting. Someone's like, okay, so assume this is true. Yeah. Where are they all going to be kept? Is someone building which apparently might be a really good business to get into, a storage facility for these humanoids? Yeah. It's insane.
News or fake news? Texas is starting to use AI to mark school exams. That's not it. However, religious questions will be marked by humans as the AI algorithm kept marking these answers as factually doubtful. News or fake news?
I think that surely is true.
That is surely false.
No way. They should be. They need to look into this because I bet that happens.
I am a creative writer, but no, that is entirely false. What sparked it is that I think Texas is actually using AI to mark exams. They're not doing the religious part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're not doing any markings on the religious part. Yeah. Well, never mind. I could have qualms with that.
It was the religious part that we're going for.